Hello, YouTube. Hey, everybody. It's Bo Brotherton with Better Together Life. I'm a nerd. So excited to be back with you. So last week we talked with Daniel Arms with the Arms Family Homestead about raising meat goats and how easy is it for them to be able to do that? How easy is it for you to be able to just put the goats out there and let them be and let them clear the land for you? Today, we're going to be talking with Dan Ohmann from the Grass-Fed Homestead. Dan is way up there in Idaho. Dan has done what everybody has told all of you not yet to be homesteaders not to do. All of us people that dream about homesteading, you've heard it several times, is don't get too many animals. Get one animal and then learn how to do that animal and perfect it. So he did like the sheep, and then he did chickens, and then I think he did meat chickens, but then he also got rabbits, and then he got an alpaca, llama. Did you get an alpaca or a llama? And then you also, Dan, you got pigs. Like, you got a lot of animals. And I am excited to hear what you have to say about all of these animals and what are you doing with these animals. Like, are you going crazy? How's your marriage? Because my wife, Kelly Brotherton, does not want a lot of animals. And I kind of understand that this is a big thing, getting a ton of animals. It's a big deal to be able to do it. So without further ado, let's jump in with Dan Ohmann, Grass-Fed Homestead, the one and only permaculture shepherd. All right, Dan, dude, we have been talking about getting together and doing this for such a long time. I think it's been like since February.
Yeah, it's been at least 6 months.
Yeah. As Dan and I were talking, we thought that a good first video for us to kind of talk about together was for Dan, because Dan, you have been just rocking the animals like crazy. And all of YouTube is like coming to you to get help, to pick your brain about this. So I guess the first question that I have, because we are getting ready to sell our house and to be able to move on to our 7 acres of just raw land. There is nothing there. So to be honest, we're going to take our rabbits, but mainly for the first, I would say 6 months. That's all that I am going to have is just my rabbits. We're not going to get any kind of animals because I promised my wife, Kelly, said that the number one priority is for us to get our home, and she wants a home. She wants, I'm taking her out of the suburbs and she wants a home, and that's the number one thing. And yes, I want to keep my wife.
The compost toilet is probably not on the list.
What she has said is that she does not want to be a prisoner in her own homestead. And by that, what we think about is going through just having animals and not being able to take trips. So that's a long introduction to say, like, whenever you moved onto your homestead, tell us your story of how you got so many different animals so fast.
Well, we started off with sheep, and we got them very quickly. We moved onto our homestead on a Saturday was moving day, okay? And it ended at, I think 11 p.m., so I don't even count that as like day one. The next day is kind of what I feel day one. That was Sunday, and that's when I got the call from our sheep breeder who said, I can bring them Monday, and that's about it. I have all these other commitments to do. That's the only day I can bring them to you. And, I don't have a livestock trailer. I didn't have the means to transport them any other way other than relying on her to deliver them. So I was like, okay, I guess I better go build a fence. So it was literally like day 2, the sheep were arriving. And it was, as I look back, kind of crazy, right? Like to have moving day, jump right into getting sheep and all that. On top of having a YouTube channel developing at the same time, I started recording for our YouTube channel at the same time. So it was a lot going on right at the beginning. But
started on moving day or the day that you count day 1?
I actually filmed on moving day. It was short. It was just I did like a time lapse of stuff moving and stuff like that. It wasn't one of my most compelling videos, but I did want to capture like that at the very beginning. So there was kind of that bookend at the beginning for that event. But in hindsight, like I look at this in two ways. If I didn't have that fire lit under me, like that circumstance where it's either Monday or it might be weeks and weeks, who knows when the next time will be. And I'm going to have to start paying for the breeder to keep my animals because they're eating her resources. So that's another factor, right? So it was in my best interest to go ahead and get them right away under that circumstance. Had I not had that fire lit, I would have probably been a lot more casual getting into it. I probably would have been, yeah, well, that was a long moving day. You know, let's take a week and then I'll start thinking about fencing. And, you know, I could see that really dragging out and me not getting done what I need to get done. So I look back, it's crazy on one hand, but a blessing on the other, in that it lit that fire under me and it got me motivated because I was working against that deadline. So the next day that Sunday, I went out to the farm store and I bought cattle panels and T-posts and all the things I needed to do to get the animals on the property, you know, water trough, a hay feed bucket. And actually, I didn't know I needed that at the time, so that actually came a few days later. But so, you know, it was like this massive acquisition of all these materials I needed to get ready, to get the basics to keep these animals alive until I can figure out what comes next. Mm-hmm. So I did that. We got the sheep up and running, and it was not long before we added the chickens. I think most people start with chickens.
Yep.
Yeah, that's often referred to as the gateway livestock, and it's what most people can start with if you're in a suburban or urban setting, because the chicken is this big, and they're easy to manage compared to say, you know, a 1,500-pound steer. Mm-hmm. Very different management requirements. So we got into chickens. We held off on the chickens a little bit because we jumped right in with the sheep by necessity.
And so how long was that in between?
It was roughly 30 days. I would say maybe 32, somewhere right in there, before we got the chickens. Once I got the sheep to a point where, okay, I understand how to keep them alive. I'm not saying at that point that I was a master of rotational grazing or anything like that. We weren't there yet in our journey. We were actually just keeping the sheep in a corral, training them to electric, trying to get my energizer and battery and all the electronic side of it figured out. That was a little bit of a learning curve for me. So while I was getting that together and I got to the point where the sheep were happy, like they were fine, then I could break off of that and we started building our chicken tractor because we needed a home for the chickens too, right? Yep. So we started building the chicken tractor, and that was the deal. The day the chicken tractor is done, we're getting chickens. So again, that was just right after a month of moving in onto the homestead. We got the chickens, and then we got a couple bonus ducks with the chickens. But the ducks weren't happy. They were there for, I want to say maybe 6-8 weeks, something like that, and they weren't laying any eggs. They were just too few. They just being 2 ducks, it wasn't enough for them. So the ducks we gave back, and we'll probably revisit that at a later time, getting into ducks. But so our first few months of homesteading, I don't want to give the viewers the impression that, we got everything at once, because it didn't quite work that way. But we also didn't really do the whole just get one species your first year rule either. So we got the chickens, and then it wasn't that was in August, and I think it was early November we got the rabbits. So just a couple more months, we got the rabbits, and then this year, this spring,
from sheep, chicken, rabbits.
Right. So kind of going in a different direction than other folks generally do. And then this year we got our breeding stock for sheep. And this is something we'll get more into, breeding stock versus feeders. That's something I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah. But we got breeding stock for our sheep. And then we got a livestock guarding dog, a livestock guardian llama. The pigs came. And then the pigs decided to have babies. So we had a bunch of piglets too. So this year, though we were still within our first year of the homestead, if you look at it from July to July, we did all that in less than a year. It was, I don't know, maybe 9 months or something like that. So yeah, we kind of broke the rule, right?
Yes. Okay. So how are you doing? How long are your morning farm chores and evening farm chores? And 2, how is your marriage?
Excellent questions. And they're kind of related, right? So that's why you asked them that way. The morning farm chores is roughly, I would say, an hour to an hour and a half. Some days it's a little bit different than others, depending on where I'm moving the sheep, how aggressive of a move it might be from one paddock to the next. So there are different variables that kind of come up that kind of alter that time. But my daily time commitment, so I do basically 3 runs of chores a day because of our situation, which is going to be very different than a lot of other people's. We got a really neglected, depleted landscape. We bought a place that hadn't been used for agriculture in probably at least a decade, but more likely more than that. In fact, so it was terribly, terribly overrun with noxious weeds. We have very, very little grass and forage quality on the land. So that requires greater time input from me. I have to bring out hay to the animals. I have to do more feeding of them because they're not able to forage as much for themselves. Because I'm doing a rotational grazing program. So my animals are moving as if we had pasture. Mm-hmm. And they do get a little bit from it, but I'm bringing the hay out to them versus just leaving them static one place and throwing them leaving huge stacks of hay everywhere and just letting them continuous feed. I'm rotating them still, so we're going to bring back these pastures. We're going to improve them constantly.
Are you doing square bales or you get the full-on round bales?
Small square bales. So these are bales that range from 60 to 75 pounds. So these are bales that I can manage, and my wife can break off a few flakes if needed as well, and feed the animals. We don't have, just for your viewers' sake, we don't have any machinery as far as a tractor, ATV, or any kind of mechanical infrastructure like that. We're doing everything. We started with nothing. There was just a house on our property, so we have a little bit of edge. Exactly. I'm not complaining, right? But we had a house, and that was it. We didn't have fencing, irrigation. There was just nothing there. So just to give a little bit of context of your viewers, we're doing everything manually at this point. We don't have the scale or the finances to justify a lot of the mechanization. So with that, with not having big tractors, we don't really have the means to move large round hay bales. They're 1,000 pounds up to 15, sometimes a full ton they can weigh. So that's just not in the question for us. So small square bales that we're running out. And again, I do that 3 times a day for what I call all the different elements. So each group or species or potentially subcategories of species is its own element. If it requires its own source of food, water, shelter, or enclosure, it's its own element. For example, chickens, we have laying hens, we have chicks in the brooder in various stages. We have ones that just hatched in the brooder, then we have another brooder that are ones that are just kind of feathering out. And then when we had meat birds, that was a whole nother element. So just with chickens, I think we had at one time up to 5 different elements going with chickens that needed their own water, their own food, their own place. Wow. So each element needed that attention. The chickens, didn't get it 3 times a day. Chickens was in the morning, and then in the evening, kind of making sure they have water and that kind of stuff. But with my ruminants, my pigs, that was 3 times a day. So taking all that per day is around 4 hours, and that does include some observation time as well. I think this is really important to spend some time with your animals just in observation mode. It's a permaculture principle, as you know, observe and interact.
Yep. And
in order to really have a good grasp on what is normal and abnormal with your animals, to detect, is there a problem here? Who's not acting right? Who's not eating? If there is a problem like that, you can catch it early if you know what their behaviors are by knowing what the normal is, observing with regularity. So I do spend a decent amount of time observing as well. That time is also in there. And it's roughly, 3.5, 4 hours a day that is dedicated to that. Now, my wife plays a role in this, and it does reduce the time when she's involved. She does travel for work. So there's a lot of time during the week that I'm single dad, and I'm trying to, I have a son and we homeschool him and, cook all the meals and do all the domestic stuff on top of the homestead stuff. And it gets a lot. But when my wife's home, she loves the chickens. She's the chicken lady. So she gladly does all the chicken chores. And that drops my personal time down. And we had that division of labor going there, and never really thought about how much, like when we work together, how much that reduces the time. But as far as the marriage goes, like, she actually enjoys that. She loves the chickens. She loves looking at chickens online, and more just keep coming in the mail.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Do it. Okay, good.
Yeah. So the marriage is good in that sense. I wanted her to be very involved with the homestead. It was important to me that she had some involvement in it, because if she wasn't about it, then I think we would have issues. I think there would be the chance that I could either burn out on it or feel like I'm on my own. And, as a marriage, we need to work together to have these shared goals. And obviously, she still has her career, and she's very passionate about that. She's very good at her job and she likes it. And so, I support her and encourage her in that. I can't necessarily directly help her in that, but she supports what I'm doing, and she likes the end results. We're putting up really high quality food at the end of the day. And so she's very emotionally supportive in that, and then physically supportive when she can regarding the chickens. She's not terribly interested in the sheep or the pigs. She thinks, like, I have a few of my lambs, like, they're really cute and that's nice kind of thing, but she's not into them. She doesn't really want to spend time learning about, grazing management and that kind of stuff. But you can talk to her about chickens all day long. That's kind of her thing. So I recognize that in her, and I gave her ownership of that. I said, that can be your thing. And it works out really well, because I like the layer birds. Like, I like getting eggs every day from them, but the meat birds, I did not like that process very much. It was kind of a grind, doing the daily meat birds kind of thing. She loved it. So I was glad to, give her ownership of it. I kind of told her, chickens are your thing, do what you want with it. And I just gave it to her, and she loves it. So long-winded answer, but I hope that kind of paints the pictures of the dynamics there.
Yes, that is exactly what I would want. So the reason why I wanted to ask that is because I saw on your video when y'all were about to get the dairy cow, and I guess that's now going to be pushed off a little bit. Right. And she said something of like, oh no, Dan's going to be taking care of the cow. Right. And it reminded me exactly, because I just now put a video up, and I was jokingly, because I just know my wife, and saying, hey, are you so excited about like getting out and doing all the chores for the animals and this, and aren't you excited? And Kelly was like, oh no, someone asked me about that, about, taking care of animals. And I said, no, there's no need for me to to care or get excited about that. That's all Bo. I'm literally like probably 2 or 3 days away from finishing my ebook. It's like 120 pages straight up, how to get off your tail and to build a homestead. And a part of that is kind of deciphering, and there's an actual workbook, like a 23 step like workbook in there. And one of the steps is defining what freedom means to you. And Kelly and I, it's not polar opposite, but it is definitely some opposite things about freedom. And with that, for me, freedom feels like full sustainability and self-reliance, like having a dairy cow, being able to provide all of our financial needs from our property. If I don't have to leave my property, that's okay. That is not freedom for her. And so for us, if you could kind of help us out to where some of the priorities that we would want to be able to do, at least let's think of the first year of our homestead is one, we want to clear land and kind of prepare the land, like just the land needs some love. It's a lot of sandy soil. There's not a lot of nutrient there. There is acorns there. So there's oak trees, there's acorns, a lot, like all over. It's about 60% wooded. And I think we get enough rainfall to be able to grow trees. And so for us, I think how much we love eggs, we want to be able to we want to be able to repair the land. And we want to be able to get food on our table. And we want to be able to teach our kids animal husbandry. But at the same time, not being locked down to where a full 365 days will go by and we weren't able to go away from our property for more than like 24 hours. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts, expert Dan?
Our situation is similar in some ways in that my wife needs a lot more than just a homestead, in that she's much more social than I am. She likes a lot of social activity. She likes going out and doing more socializing events and that kind of thing, where I'm content to be on the homestead working the animals. She does also like, she would like to travel on occasion, kind of thing. So our needs in that sense are met to a degree because of her work. It's this is not going to be everyone's situation, but she does travel a lot for work. So during the week, she is gone a lot, and she's going to big cities all over the place. And she's going to offices where she is meeting people that when she does work from home, these are people she talks with and does video conference with and all that. So, they're not strangers. She's getting a lot of social interaction and dealing with clients at work and that kind of thing. So she's getting a lot of that met by her job, which is really good for me. So I don't have as much of that conflict because it seems to be resolving. So that conflict is kind of being resolved through her work, and I'm getting a lot of what I need from my work, between the homestead and doing the YouTube and all that. So the balance that we have come to, I've left a couple times. I have left. Let's see, I went last December, it was the end of November to December. I went back to Atlanta. A mentor of mine in my previous career was retiring, so I visited his retirement ceremony. And then in February of this year, I went to the Seattle area to do the Farmstead Meatsmith workshop. And in both of those cases, Ashley did a complete takeover. She held everything down. And, it was one of those things which, it's just like 3 days. It's not like I'm gone a week. And I I set up things ahead of time to where everything was as minimal as possible for her to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was already taken care of as much as possible, and everything went really well. There were no issues. This winter, things are going to be a little bit different in that we have our breeding stock. Last winter, we just went overwintered chickens and rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, we're going to have our sheep and potentially some pigs as well. They were not intended to be breeding stock, but things had a way of working out differently. But so what I'm actually going to be doing this winter, and I have not really discussed this elsewhere, so this is still in its infancy. I'm planning on actually building a system where we could leave for a few days with the way I set up a winter shelter. Okay. Basically, I'm going to be building with cattle panels and pallets. If you saw my video with the milking parlor that I was building, yep. Mm-hmm. Basically a design like that, get it framed for snow load. Of course, that probably wouldn't be an issue for you down there. But essentially filling it halfway, maybe 2/3, something like that, with hay, stacked hay bales, and then housing the animals in there for a few days. Now they wouldn't be restricted in there. They would be like an outside fence, a corral, if you will, but they could go in there for shelter and continuously feed. And then also we have to use heaters in our water to keep it from freezing. Do you guys get a freeze? Okay. So not an issue for you guys.
Maybe like once a year. Well, definitely not. I mean, in Houston, we might have water freeze like that maybe once every 3 or 7 years.
And it would probably thaw out the following morning, right?
Oh yeah. So I mean, we're going to be 2 hours north of here, so maybe a little. I know that Jack Spirko in Dallas, his water will freeze. Right. Maybe 5 to 7 days a year in the winter, but yeah, I don't think we have to worry about that.
Yeah, it sounds like you probably won't.
And we just won't travel around that time.
Right. So there's this heating element you can put in water, and when I say heat, it keeps it, just from freezing. It's not like it's making the water warm. It's going to be cold water still. It just keeps it from freezing. So we would add those in the water tanks, and I would still have someone come by just to make sure like the circuit didn't trip and the water's frozen, or just to refill the tank. So again, I would create a scenario where it's as easy as possible to bring in a third party just to come in and make sure they have food and water. Like the food thing should be taken care of with our sheep, with the hay, with chickens. I think it might be a little different, but I think it's a lot easier to show someone just to throw some grain out for the chickens than it is managing hay bales and stuff like that.
You have to let them out.
Yeah, so we automated our chickshaw, so that's something I wasn't thinking about. But yeah, letting them out.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
See, that's the challenge with getting somebody to come watch your place, is if they have to come twice in the same day. Okay. That's an issue. So
that's a cool thing. So that could, I just thought about that, saving your laziness. Not your lazy. I mean, like a person's like that's what it's there for, is so that you don't have to do it at night. But that's I never thought about that for someone not having to come twice.
Right. For us, our motivation in doing that was mainly in the evening during the summer. Well, I mean, it gets like broad daylight where we are at our northern latitude at 4:30 in the morning. If you wake up at 5 and you get out of bed, it looks like it's like 10 or 11 in the morning. It's that bright. You're like, oh my gosh, I slept the day away. And you look at it's 5 a.m. You're like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, it is super bright, super early here. And of course it stays pretty late. Like it's Still dusky 9:45 to 10 p.m. during June, July. So
and you have really long nights in the winter?
No, it's the opposite in the winter. We have very little daylight in the winter. So
that's what I'm meaning, is that like you have so like the night times are
yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
In the winter.
Yes.
So you have I'm in the middle, like, I mean, so your extremes are, I guess that's what they talk about in Alaska, like
Yes. We're not as extreme as Alaska, but we don't have 20 hours of sunlight during the day. I think we have 18, something like that, during the summer. And then during the winter, it's really bad. Like it's dark by 4 p.m. Like it's like we have to do evening chores. We start evening chores like at 3 something sometimes. So if we don't want to be finishing by headlamp, Yeah. So with the summer, the big thing for us was we would do evening chores after dinner. We'd finish 7:30 dinner. We go outside to do evening chores. We'd be done 8:30, and then twiddle our thumbs for another. Well, not twiddle. I mean, there's plenty of other things to do in the house, right? But we would have to go back out again after doing all the brushing our teeth, getting ready for bed, and all that kind of stuff for our son, and showering him, and all the domestic stuff. And the last thing you want to do is go back out at that time when it's finally dark to put the chickens up. It was just kind of annoying. So we automated. But yeah, that would be a really good thing to do if you're going to bring in a third party to help care for your property. So I'm going to try to set up a system this winter so that we can do something together, because that's the one thing we can't do right now. My wife, like I said, she leaves all the time, which satiates her needs, her travel and socialization and stuff like that, and getting to the cities, right? Yeah. And I can go if I need to, if I want to, because I know I can count on her, but we can't do anything together. And that's not been a conflict yet. I can't say that it won't be in, say, 2 years. Like, it's been fine because we're at the 15-month mark or so, something like that now. So it's not like we've been doing this forever and she's fine with it the way it is. I think eventually it could be a conflict. So we're going to try and do that this winter. I don't really have any great wisdom to share. Our situation, like the natural inclination is neighbors, right? You would have someone that can just walk over or ride over. Our conflict with our neighbors, they're on either side of us. They're very, well, I should be polite. On one side, they're pretty elderly, like 80, mid-80s. And then on the other side, early 70s. I don't want to be offensive and say that's very old. I mean, it's not. My parents are in their early 70s, right? But
you're so polite.
I try to be. But I don't want to put them in a position, especially in the winter, of like coming over to check our animals and have to go through fencing and slip on ice or something at their age. So I would want to find someone that's younger, and that kind of eliminates our neighbors. So I wish I had some really good wisdom on this, but I think the best thing I can say is just try to design a system that makes it as easy as possible for a third party to come in and manage while you are gone. That's not the time to be doing rotational grazing. Mm-hmm. Your animals go on hold for a few days, and it's not gonna kill them. It's not gonna cause any problems for a few days if you put them on hold. That's not the time to be relying exclusively on electric fencing.
That was a question. That's good.
Yeah, put them behind some cattle panels. Put them behind real fencing at that point. You don't want them breaking down fencing and having your help try and resolve that conflict. Mm-hmm. And it's not the time to be doing creative feeds. Sourcing bugs for your chickens and that kind of stuff, and planning on that being part of their diet. No, just keep it simple. Chickens, throw them the grain. Sheep get their hay, or if they're on pasture still, great. If you want to continuous graze, give them, if you're going to be gone for 4 days, give them a 4-day paddock, that kind of thing. So there are some things you can do to minimize the workload, and that's really all I can think of to help you with that. That's kind of what I'm dealing with on my end. So
okay, so of those animals, what is your favorite animal, and what would you, after doing this for 15 months, what would you recommend to, say, Kelly and I, who also have 4 kids, and I want to ask about little buddy and like what chores he likes to do. But if you were me and you had the knowledge that you have now, like what would you say you would recommend in terms of animals to start with?
To answer your first part of the question, as far as what my personal favorite is I love the sheep.
Okay.
And the case I make for sheep is, and why I think people should consider it for their homestead if they don't already have sheep, is one, it's the size, right? You're getting an animal that, which breed, like there are some bigger breeds of sheep, but generally we're not talking about massive animals. These are animals that you can manage, you can get hands-on with as a small homesteader. That's, if you're just starting, I mean, this is perfect. If you want to get into ruminants, because you can handle them. If one escapes, you're not, it's manageable to get it back. You can pick a sheep up if you need to and carry it, or versus, say, I don't know, an 800 or 1,000 pound boar, large pigs. Then that kind of brings up another thing, is their docility and the fact that they're not going to eat you or your child like a pig will. Like some breeds of pigs, like you get these big pigs, if you fall into their pig pen and if you don't move quickly enough to get up, I mean, there's that risk, right? You're not on their menu. The sheep will not eat you.
I've heard a lot of people with pigs is they're saying, I mean, like, if you need to carry, you need to be carrying while around a pig. They always have, like, I don't, what kind of, and sorry YouTube, because I know that y'all don't like talking about this stuff, but what kind of gun would you need for a pig? And
my pigs are American Guinea hogs, and I don't have that issue. I think in most cases, if you're at a close distance, I've seen somebody use a 9mm and just take a pig. I mean, you have to be accurate, right? Like, so if you're trying to stop the threat of a pig, if you're accurate and you hit it where you need to in the brain, you can stop it with probably any round. But if you don't hit it there, you just have an angry pig, right? Like, it's not going to affect them in the way that it would affect a human. Like, the pig is not going to feel sorry for itself and go mope and lick its wounds. You know what I mean? So I don't have any experience of that because, I'm choosing animals that are really easy to deal with, docile, not going to eat you, that kind of thing. So my pig,
buddy go into the pig pen.
Yes.
Okay. And you don't have kunis, do you? Do you?
American Guinea hogs.
Okay, yeah. Tell me, what's the difference between that and the kunis?
Okay, so there are a lot of similarities. They both grow painfully slowly. They're not quick growers. If you're looking to get to market weight in 6 months, you need a different breed.
Okay.
They both are similar in how they do on feed, though. They both require very little feed. They do well on little feed. And in fact, because they're both lard hogs, if you overfeed them, they can get morbidly obese and very unhealthy.
Did you say lard hogs?
Lard hogs, yeah.
Okay.
So you have bacon hogs and you have lard hogs. Lard hogs are really, really efficient at putting on just lots of fat. You can, it's very easy to get like several inches of back fat off of these guys, and especially for their size. These are smaller hogs too, right? And the bacon hogs, like you have like large black, just is the first that comes to mind. They are just known for putting on really good meat in the bacon. They're leaner, which a lot of people in our culture, in our markets, if we're selling pork, like a little bit on the leaner side. I think that's what most people are used to. And more of the red, less of the white, right, in your meat.
Okay.
So, but the lard hog, gives you so much to render for cooking and baking applications and all that. It's a tremendous asset. So the Kuni and the American Guinea Hog are similar with both of those. They need to have relatively little feed compared to most hogs. A lot of pig growers will have these huge grain feeders in the pig paddock. Even Joel Salatin has these, if you've watched any of his videos. It's very normal, and the pigs just have continuous access to grain as much as they can eat, and a lot of those breeds do fine like that. Your Berkshire, your Tamworths, your big standard heritage breeds do fine that way. And you get a great market hog in 6 months, 7 months. The American Guinea Hogs and Kunis, if you gave them access like that, they would be sick from being so obese. They'd be like so much back fat on them. You wouldn't know what to do with all the fat, right? Like, it would be an unhealthy animal. It would not be a good situation. You don't want to give them that. Like, we're talking, like, you measure their feed by the cup. That's how small this is. And they grow fat on that. They get bigger on that. Here's the biggest difference between the Kuni and the American Guinea Hog, though, because you asked what the difference are. I'm giving you all the similarities. Right? Mm-hmm. The difference is the Kuni can thrive on pasture exclusively, whereas the American Guinea Hog does very well on pasture, which puts these breeds ahead of many others if you're trying to reduce your grain inputs. The American Guinea Hog you can raise one exclusively on pasture. It doesn't do as well as the Kuni. This is based on now my experience, what I'm hearing from other people that are raising the Kuni breeds, talking to other American Guinea Hog growers, because if you read exclusively what's put on in publications about the American Guinea Hog, they tell you how wonderful they do on pasture alone, that they're a grazing hog. And while that's true to a degree, they have come to the opinion that they do need some supplementation, whereas the Kuni has a longer long intestine, so the grass that's going through it, if they're grazing, and not just grass, I mean, forbs and weeds and whatever else they're finding out on pasture, the green stuff that's going through it goes through it for a longer time because it has a longer distance to travel. Thus, more nutrients are being absorbed out of it. Most pigs aren't able to do that because they're not ruminant. They're monogastric. They have one stomach just like us, and we can't just eat grass, or we can't just eat lettuce all day and thrive, right? We need that protein, for whatever reason, these pigs, well, not whatever, again, it goes back to the long intestine issues, but these pigs do much better with that than, say, a Berkshire, Tamworth, and some of the especially compared to, like, what we consider the conventional confinement breeds, your big pink pig, the Duroc, I think it is, that kind of thing, that, like, if they were on pasture only, they would fail, that they would not do well. So those are the benefits of the Kuni American Guinea Hog. And if you're trying to graze, if you want a pasture management program with pigs, the Kuni is your best bet versus American Guinea Hog. My American Guinea Hogs root. I was told that this breed doesn't root. Mine do. And I've heard from many other people now that had bought them for the same reason and found out that they do root. It's not as bad as the big pigs. Like, my craters are much smaller, and I'm having to stay on top of them more, move them more often to keep them from doing that. But the Kuni, the way their snout is, it's more upturned to if they were to drop their head to go to root, what hits the ground first is their jaw. And that triggers a grazing instinct in them versus a rooting instinct. So my pigs, my American Guinea Hogs, their nose goes right in the ground like a shovel and just scoops it right up.
Well, and I wonder what my pasture would need. Because I have it's so wooded, and there are acorns all over the place. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the Kuni would be able to get them. I mean, maybe. I have no idea.
Yeah. So to get to that section of your question, what's good for you? Immediately I was thinking pigs.
Yeah.
And I don't think in your context, you would necessarily, need to do a Kune or even American Guinea hog. And the reason I say that is, I'm using my American Guinea hogs to try to speed up the restoration of what was once pasture. It got completely overgrown in this one section where they are now with knapweed, which I'm not worried about from a toxicity standpoint like I am the Brackin firm, but there is a nutritional deficiency there. It's not going to give them, if I just graze the sheep on it, they don't get enough from it. So the sheep, I grazed the sheep in there earlier in the year when the knapweed was really soft and tender, and they did eat that down, which was great. What came back has since lignified, so it's stemmy and hard, and now the sheep won't touch it because there's nothing there for them. The pigs are doing is they're rooting it up. They're going underneath and they are eating those roots of the knapweed, and they're completely clearing it out. And when they're done, I have a completely tilled 25 by 25 area. Wow. And I'm going in there and casting seed. I'm putting in a fall cover crop in there, which has not germinated yet. We are just now getting our rains, and the temperature has dropped as the rain come in. So we have the water now, but we don't have the germination temperatures now, but that's a story for another day. So my pigs in that context are doing that. They're being relatively gentle because I don't have big brush. I'm not, we're not dealing with a forest or glen scenario. This is open pasture. So I want a gentler animal in there. For you, I watched your property tour video where you did the flyover with a drone. I mean, that had been over the winter, I'm thinking. It's been a long time since I've seen that video.
Yeah, I think it was February, March, so it hadn't greened up. I mean, it doesn't really green up a ton.
Right.
Because I'm in Texas, but yeah.
Right. So based on seeing that then, one, it's been a while since I've seen it, so my memory's faded on it, but two, it wasn't like the growing season either. But based on what I saw there from that, a couple of animals actually come to mind, which is, one is pigs. I think like that brushy stuff you see everywhere, putting pigs in that, they're going to completely take that down. If you have stands of trees, I'm not entirely familiar with all the different, species you got going of trees in there, but if there are some areas you want thinned, you throw the hogs in there, they're going to take your smaller trees out, like trees that are even that big around, they're going to take those out. Your American Guinea hog is not going to do that job though, and the Kune as well. These are your bigger hogs that are going to get in there and do the dirty work and set this up for you. Okay. But here's the thing though, and this is something else I wanted to talk to you about, is breeding stock versus feeders. Yeah. I had a mentor going into this, and my mentor really admonished this bit of advice. This was something really strong that she suggested that really resonated with me. And it kind of goes also back to how much do you jump in with at once. She said, your first year, never get your breeding stock. Yeah. And this is what our first season, like I adhered to that with the sheep. We just bought feeder sheep and we harvested at the end of the year. And then with that, we were able to, one, not have that huge upfront investment with breeding stock. Two, we got to see whether we liked it or not. What if this animal was a good fit for us, for the landscape, if it's a good breed for us in our context, that kind of thing. So I say that to say, if you do start with pigs or whatever, sheep or whatever, you can, your first season, you bring in your big pigs, right? But you're buying them as feeders, so they're not going to be full grown. So I'm saying big pigs as far as like big compared to American Guinea hogs, but these aren't your breeding stock, so they're not going to be 500, 600, 800 pounds. These are going to be feeders that you're going to finish out at 220-ish pounds. How long do you think that would? I know it depends, but on average, how long do you think a bigger pig would take to grow? I have a few pig farmers that I'm friends with that raise a few different breeds. Idaho pasture pig, which is a pig that was generated up here in Idaho. I don't know that you'd have access to one of those where you are, but they also raise like large blacks, and Berkshires are really popular in this area. I have actually a few friends doing Berkshires, but the Berks, which produces a really high quality pork, they're hitting like 7 months and done.
Okay.
From birth to market weight.
Yeah. And whenever I think of that, I think of it's either Babe or Charlotte's Web, when they call him like he's a spring pig, or he's like they started at, in the spring, I guess, and then it's to be, Christmas dinner. Right,
exactly. So so a lot of pig farrowing is done in the spring, and then you have your fall harvest, October, November, that time frame. Of course, you guys have a probably a smaller window for your temperatures that you want to harvest, but
it gets hot. So we could actually do it over I don't know how that works in Texas. Yeah. It's completely different.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So I say, getting back to the pigs, when I say big pigs, I mean your bigger breed, but the pigs you'd be buying feeder pigs in the spring kind of thing, raising them up through, and as they grow, they're going to get bigger and they're going to take some of that stuff out. Alternatively, you could buy, if you go to Craigslist, I see this all the time on Craigslist, people just trying to sell their feeder pig toward harvest, like the ones that they weren't able to sell in time as babies, that kind of thing. They're ready to harvest. You bring them in for a couple months, finish them out, and they take out all that brush for you. And then once they're
big already.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
I kind of feel more comfortable with like a little piggy than my first chance of getting a bigger one. But
right. Figure that out. But there's that trade-off. The little ones aren't going to give you the disturbance you're looking for. Yeah. So you find your sweet spot there. But what that enables you to do is you get the dirty work done with your, let's just say a Berkshire, right? I think they're a fantastic hog, and this would be great in that scenario, right? The Berkshire is going to take out all that stuff. Large blacks, they take a little bit longer than Berkshires to finish out, but they're still, they give you great bacon, right? That's what they're known for. Mm-hmm. They're going to take out a lot of the brushiness, the trees and all that. You get a good harvest in the fall or winter, whenever it is for you. The next spring, you want to bring in now pigs that is more focused on, now that you're more established, mm-hmm. You can look at getting breeding stock, or just get more feeders if you want, you know what I mean? And get maybe the slower growing ones at that point that are gentler on the landscape. So that's kind of the approach I think would be really good with pigs. Now, with sheep, I do think sheep can play a role on your property. And the reason, and this was another thing in my case for sheep I didn't get to earlier, but they're a ruminant. So ruminants, the feed goes in, they chew it goes into their rumen first, and that's like this big lacto fermentation tank. Yeah. And it comes back up and cut, and then it gets swallowed and goes through the other chambers of the stomach, etc. But when it comes out the other end, like the quality of the manure is so awesome, compared to a lot of the other animals. Like a cow or cattle, like would be number one. Like there's nothing that can restore faster than the cattle. Wow. But if we get back to taking on things responsibly, I don't think you should start there. And these are huge animals. The fencing and a lot of stuff changes when you get to that scale. The requirements and just learning livestock in general is harder with such a bigger animal up front. So starting again with a smaller animal is probably more appropriate. So with that, if you're cycling nutrients through a ruminant, you're getting really good stuff coming out the other end. So a sheep breed that would do well in your environment is the Dorper.
Is that a hairless one?
It's a woolless, right? It's a hair sheep.
Hair sheep.
So they're not going to require the shearing. They're woollier than my Katahdins. They have like more of a denser hair to them, but they're not going to get this huge wool product that you have to shear, right? So it's lower maintenance.
But your Katahdins are hair sheep.
Correct.
Okay, I think there's someone in have you ever heard of Texas Prepper 2 on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's in East Texas, and I think he does Katahdin. He does either one of those. So I've always thought if I got sheep, it'd probably be over by him.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm suggesting the Dorper over the Katahdin in this case is because the Dorper is known to really thrive in more arid and rougher forage.
Okay.
So if you took a Katahdin and the Dorper and put them both in your environment, I think the Dorper would do better. They're going to do a better job of clearing some of the stuff you don't want in there, and they're going to better handle that type of forage than the Katahdin. Just my anecdotal observation and opinion on that. The Dorper also gives you a meatier lamb chop in the end. Their loin is a little bigger than the Katahdin. If everything else is equal, the Dorpers just get a meatier loin than the Katahdin. The Katahdin shines with better disease resistance than the Dorper. But I think if you manage everything appropriately, rotational grazing, keeping up with garlic and molasses, natural wormings as a preventative maintenance program, and giving them their mineral supplementation with diatomaceous earth in it. If you keep those are like the 3 keys to animal livestock health maintenance. If you keep up with that, you should still be fine. It's not like you're going to have to be giving pharmaceuticals to manage your problem or anything. So I do think the Dorper can play a role there. You would have to be bringing in hay. Yeah. Because I don't think you would have enough forage for them otherwise. But again, you would be doing a similar system to what we're doing, is we're bringing in hay, running it through the animals, and fertilizing our soil to bring in a pasture. And Greg Judy, who is a famous grazer, talks about this process a lot. It's kind of where I got the concept from him doing that. He did it with his, I think he was using the big round bales. I feel good enough that once we get with rabbits that I'm gonna do some different housing to get them actually on the ground once we have the space for it. So right. I'm excited about that, and then open up to probably some feeder, either pigs or sheep. I was gonna ask if you're gonna scale up the rabbits at all, but I think so. I'm not going to say it on this video. Well, actually, I guess I can say it on this video because I'm planning on doing a video before this one would air. Dude, I'm going to the Jack's fall workshop. Oh, cool. That's awesome. I'm so stoked. And I guess Nick Ferguson's going to be talking about like high intensity food production. And he's a big rabbit guy. So I'm super excited to hear what he has to say in terms of everything with doing the rabbits. So that's kind of the plan, is really crank up my knowledge of rabbit production and feeding the poop to the worms, and kind of scaling up all that. Okay, dude, Dan, thank you so much for giving me your time and being able to help me, my newbiness. We're excited to be able to get on the dirt and just be able to be real. I know that they say that we homestead here in the suburbia, but it's completely different. I'm just excited. So thank you, man. And I'm excited to talk for the next one on your channel. Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of wrap things up in real quick conclusion, I think that you can responsibly add more animals, more than one a year, if you do it right and you keep within your context. Keeping your elements to a minimum is more important than keeping your overall animals to a minimum. So keep that in mind. And I really think that in your situation, like the most obvious first animal addition, chickens are no brainer, right? I mean, you're going to get chickens anyway, but is the pig. I think you're going to see the most bang for the buck, most return in work effort and meat harvest at the end for what your landscape needs and is going to provide them. So that's where I am with it, and I'm really excited to see what you guys do with it. You know it, man. 2018, we'll be doing this again and actually talking about
doing it, like actually getting the animal. So
Right on.
I'm stoked to be able to keep talking. Thank you, man. You're rock and rolling. I love it.
You're welcome. We'll see you on the next one.
Okay. Later, Dan. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I told you that there's a reason why they call him the permaculture shepherd. He knows how to raise animals on grass. And Dan is like wicked smart. He's a smart dude. But that is all that we have for today. Go check out Dan's channel, the Grass-Fed Homestead. And you're going to learn so much from him and how all this cool stuff that he's doing. So go subscribe to him down below. And then also check out our free ebook, 50 Homestead Moneymakers. This is 50 ideas that you can add to your side hustle so that you can do what we're doing, moving on our homestead and trying to make all of our money from our property. Thank you guys. See you on the next one. Bye.